The pieces landed on the linoleum like confetti nobody wanted. My mother wiped her hands on her apron as if she'd just finished a chore, not ended a decade. "You're not going anywhere," she said, and laughed. That short, satisfied laugh she used when she thought a door had finally closed for good. My flight was in 3 hours. I looked at the shredded blue cover, the eagle torn clean through the middle, and I didn't panic. I felt something closer to relief, which surprised me more than it should have. I'd learned a long time ago that reacting was a kind of currency in this house, and I'd stopped spending it. 2 years ago, I got a job offer in another city. I remember sitting at this same table while she listed reasons calmly, like a doctor delivering a diagnosis I hadn't asked for. "You'd be alone. You don't know anyone there. What if something happens to you and no one's around?" I remember believing her, actually believing her, and turning the offer down, and feeling like I'd made a mature decision instead of watched one made for me. The bank card came a year after that. "I'll just hold on to it for safekeeping," she'd said. The week my direct deposit changed banks, and somehow the new card ended up in her nightstand drawer instead of my wallet, and somehow I never asked for it back, because asking always cost more than it was worth. You don't notice a room getting smaller while you're standing in it. You just notice, one day, that you can touch both walls without moving your arms. So 8 months ago, when my passport went missing during a family trip, misplaced somewhere between the hotel safe and my suitcase, she said, "So sorry, we'll sort it when we're home." I filed a report for a replacement. Lost items happen. Nobody questioned a distressed daughter standing in line at the passports office with a police report and a look of genuine, practiced worry. I never mentioned that I had, in fact, found the original 2 days later, tucked behind the winter coats in the hall closet. I didn't need to mention it. I just let two passports exist quietly, in two different places, and I never corrected the record. The new one lived in a manila folder at my friend Raina's apartment, along with a printed itinerary, a burner card loaded with 3 months of careful, unnoticed savings, and a business card from a lawyer I'd met at a friend of a friend's dinner 11 months ago, back when this was still a hypothetical. I never told anyone the hypothetical had a date attached. Not even Raina knew the date until last week. My mother stepped over the shredded paper like it was nothing, like she'd already filed this moment underhandled and went to put the kettle on. That was the part that used to break something in me. The domesticity of it. The way cruelty in this house always came dressed as care, always ended with tea. I didn't cry, I didn't yell. I picked up my phone, and I called the number I'd saved under a name that wasn't its own. Aunt Carol, because a saved contact called Immigration Liaison would have raised questions I didn't want to answer 6 months early. It wasn't dramatic. My voice came out flatter than I expected, almost bored, reciting a case number I'd memorized without meaning to. I'd opened a file with the consulate 2 weeks after the lost passport incident. Not out of certainty this day would come, but out of the same instinct that made me keep two passports in the first place. A pattern, documented. A flight booked and paid for under my own name, from my own account, the one she didn't know I'd opened. A flag that would trip the moment I called in and said the thing I was calling in to say. She was still filling the kettle when I hung up. "Who was that?" she asked. Not really a question, more a formality. "Nobody," I said, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, that word felt true and untrue at the same time. Nobody she knew, but somebody who was already, at that moment, opening a case file with my name at the top of it. The knock came 40 minutes later. Not dramatic. No lights, no uniforms crowding the doorway. Just a woman in plain clothes with an ID clipped to her jacket, and a man behind her holding a tablet asking, with the kind of neutral courtesy that doesn't require you to perform your pain for it, whether I was available to speak with them privately. My mother's face did something I'd never seen it do before. Not fear, exactly. More like arithmetic failing in real time. The sudden, visible recalculation of a woman who believed she'd accounted for every variable and discovered, standing in her own kitchen, that she hadn't accounted for me. "There's been a report of a travel document being destroyed," the woman said, mild as weather. "We'll need a few minutes." My mother started to explain. A misunderstanding. A family disagreement. Nothing serious. And I watched her reach for the version of the story that had always worked before, the one where I stayed quiet and let her narrate both our lives. But there was a second passport in a folder across town, and a lawyer's number already dialed once as a formality months ago, and a paper trail that didn't need my mother's permission to exist. I answered their questions in the hallway, out of her earshot, in the same flat voice I'd used on the phone. Yes, my documents had been destroyed. Yes, I had a flight. Yes, I could produce identification. No, I didn't want to press charges. Not yet, maybe not ever. I just wanted to leave. They drove me to Raina's to collect the folder. Nobody clapped. Nobody said anything triumphant. The officer just checked the passport against a printed form, nodded once, and said I was clear to travel. I made the flight with 11 minutes to spare, no montage, no music, just the ordinary hum of an airport at dusk and a boarding pass with my own name printed correctly, for what felt like the first time in years. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I felt like someone who'd finally stopped bleeding, which isn't the same as being healed. Somewhere over a state I couldn't name from the window, I turned my phone back on and saw 4 missed calls and no voicemails. I didn't call back. Not out of anger. Out of the simple, unglamorous fact that I didn't yet know what I'd say, and I've learned not to speak until I do. The folder sat in my lap the whole flight, closed, unremarkable, the most ordinary-looking thing in the world. I kept one hand on it anyway, the way you hold something you spent a long time learning how to keep.